excited to be back on today with another craft for us. And last week we made a craft for Palm Sunday, and this week I have a craft that has to do with Easter. And it's not an Easter craft like an Easter egg or a bunny or a cross, things that we might typically think of when we think of Easter. This is an Easter craft that has to do with kind of one of my traditions that I think a lot of people kind of share a similar tradition. And so this craft has to do with a sunrise, which is something that's really important to me on Easter. I like to celebrate Easter starting off early in the morning by watching the sunrise, because Easter is a time of year when we remember the story of Jesus' resurrection, and it's a story about having new life and hope and things like that that happen also in the springtime all around us in nature. And the sunrise every morning is a great reminder about new life and a fresh start. And so that is one of the ways I like to celebrate Easter, and that's what this craft has to do with. So I'll show you. This is the craft that we're going to make today. It's kind of, some parts are like collage, some parts are coloring, but the really exciting part is the actual sunrise. And I'm going to show you how I made that and some different ways you could do it if you don't have the same materials that I do. But the interesting part about this craft is it uses a material that might be a little bit surprising. So let me show you what we're going to use. I'll set this, my table's full. I'm going to set it over here for now so that I can come back to it. So the things we're going to need to make our sunrise are markers, a coffee filter. This is the part that goes in the top of your coffee pot. So I bet a lot of families do have this at home. If you don't have it, you could use regular white paper, but this is really convenient for the project. I'll show you why in a minute. And the last thing you need to make the sunrise is water. I have my water in a spray bottle. It does make it easier, but you don't need that to make it work. So here's how to make the sunrise part. I used markers, and I used these colors because they're the ones that reminded me most of a sunrise. You might choose to use slightly different colors. You could use red also, or maybe purple. It's up to you what colors remind you of a sunrise. These are the ones I chose. And I will say, I tried to do this project with Sharpie markers, and it did not work. So permanent markers probably won't work. It will be easier to use regular Crayola markers. So you take your coffee filter, and it comes like this, kind of the shape of a cupcake, and I'm going to flatten it out on my table. Flatten it out. It won't be completely flat, it'll do this, and that's okay. And the first thing that I'm going to do is start in the center of my coffee filter, and I'm going to color a circle of yellow. And I am not going to do my most careful coloring. I'm going to do some scribbling, because all I want to do is get the color yellow down in the middle of my paper. It does not need to cover all the white space at all. Just like that, just scribbling yellow in the middle. And then the next thing I'm going to do is move out around my circle and do an edge of orange. Not all the way to the edge of the coffee filter, just a circle of orange around, leaving space because I still have pink. So I'm going to color my next circle kind of in this space around the yellow. So I'm going to scribble again. It does not need to fill in all the spaces, and you'll see why in a minute. It's almost like a little art science experiment that's going to happen. So let me get my orange down so you'll be able to see. The last color that I'm going to use is pink. And I'm curious to see what you all would choose for sunset colors. Everybody might think of something different because every sunrise and sunset is different. So We can all choose unique colors. So I would keep going with the pink all the way around. So I'm almost there. And I'm really coloring quickly because our paper is not going to look this way for very long. It won't stay this way. So I'm not too worried about how it looks. So I have colored all the way around very, very quickly. I did an example before I started using all of the same colors, and I added one more that was in between yellow and orange, kind of a macaroni and cheese color. And I colored this one all the way around as well, because I did find it helps to do a few different ones just to have extras. So you'll see which one you like the best when it's all finished. So I have my coffee filter that's flattened out and colored most of the way in, but you can tell there is white space. And I am now going to make this completely wet, which sounds a little crazy because I just colored this. Why would I want to make it wet? But you'll see what happens. I'm using a plate right now because I'm trying not to make a big mess, but you could also do the spraying part or wetting down part over the sink or outside, and that would help with the mess. I'm not in either of those places, so I have a paper plate hopefully to catch the water, and I'm gonna see the best way to show you what I'm going to do. I think if I hold it slightly like this. So I have water, just plain water in my spray bottle, and if you don't have a spray bottle, that's totally fine. You could just get a little bit of water in your hands and sprinkle it on with your fingers. And that would work the same way. I would not recommend putting your whole coffee filter underneath your sink, underneath your faucet. That would make, I think, a little bit too much water. So just something that will lightly sprinkle water with your fingers, or I'm going to use a spray bottle. And here's what's going to happen. I have my coffee filter with my marker. I have my spray bottle. And I'm gonna lightly spray all around so the whole thing gets wet. And you can see the colors start to blend together. And if I move the plate around, some of the color moves and it all begins to blend. Now, once I have it like this, if I leave it in my tray where I just sprayed the water, it's gonna never dry. So I have some napkins to lay it out on while we're here. And it really does not take very long at all for the coffee filter to dry. So what I'll do is I will lift it out of the plate. And you'll notice I didn't spray too much water because that would make a big puddle. So I lift it out of the plate like this, and some color drips off, and that's okay. And then I just lay it down on some napkins to dry. A paper towel would work, or even if you have a little cookie rack or something like that. And then I just put the plate to the side. And I could do another, actually I have another one here. I'll show you again in case it was harder to see the first time. So I put it down, and all I do is just spray a little bit of water, or you could sprinkle it with your fingers. And the colors start to blend together. You can kind of see them moving around. It's a little tricky to see the camera angle, but I'll leave that one to dry. So once you've sprayed it, it takes about 5 minutes to dry. And since we're on video here together, I did some ahead of time. So I'm going to show you the rest of the craft using one I already made. So to make the shape of the sunrise, all you have to do is fold your coffee filter in half, like a taco. So I'm just folding it, and I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm using tape, and you could use tape or a glue stick would work also, in between, just to hold the top round shape together so it doesn't flop open. So I have my sunrise in half, ready to go. You could stop here and make lots of little sunrises and clip them in your window, and the sunlight coming through this would look so beautiful. The other thing I wanted to say, if you don't have coffee filter and marker, you could get the same effect using plain white paper and maybe watercolors, or just coloring with crayons and markers, and you could continue with the rest of the craft with however you created your sunrise. The most important thing for me is the shape of it. so a half circle. So what you're gonna need for the rest of the craft is blue paper. That's really all you need. So what I'm going to do is take my blue paper and my sunrise, and I'm gonna put it pretty much right in the middle. And again, I'm using tape, but a glue stick would also work perfectly well for this craft. So all I need to do is put a little tape or glue stick on the back of my sunrise. And I'm gonna put a little bit up at the top as well. So I put it, if you were using glue, you could go all the way around, or I put 3 pieces of tape just to help it stick. And then I'm going to stick it about halfway on my paper. And then what you do after this is up to you. My tradition that I think of when I think of the sunrise at Easter is watching the sunrise near the ocean. So I'm going to add some ocean waves underneath. You might think of something different. So you could add grass underneath. It's totally up to you how you do the rest of your landscape here. I am going to show you how I make the ocean waves, and I'm curious if you have a different idea how you might do that. So I'm going to set this down for a moment, and you could use all sorts of things if you want to make ocean waves like me. I'm using blue paper. You could use white that you've colored blue. You could use, the ocean can be all kinds of colors. Whatever you have would work really well. I'm going to use blue. And from my example, I've already cut this one, so I'm just going to cut another wave underneath and use these same cut marks. And I'm going to cut a wavy line underneath. The good thing about cutting wavy shapes is there's no right or wrong way to do it. Waves look all sorts of ways. So I'm going to put the scraps aside because there's still more I could use. And what I chose to do for mine, which could be the same or different from what you chose, is to use 2 colors and kind of line them up to show different waves. So that's what I'm going to use. And I used, again, I'm using tape, but you could use glue to attach. So I'm going to use a little tape to attach these to one another and then to the picture. And I chose to put mine so that they slightly overlap the sunrise, so you can see the waves in the sunrise. I'm going to tape it on, and you could use, again, glue or tape, either way. Everything you do after this is totally up to you. Your creative decisions on what you would like to make. I'm adding a little tape and sticking on my waves. You'll see this paper was a little larger than my first blue paper, so I'm going to trim off the edge so that it's not hanging over. So now I have my sunrise, the sky, and some ocean waves that it looks like I have 3 colors of ocean waves. After this, for my picture, I chose to cut some little white birds. You could also draw some more details if you want, or you could stop here and it looks beautiful. But I'm going to add these little birds up on top just to show that I am at the ocean, because they kind of look like seagulls to me. I'm curious if anybody else has something about Easter that something that reminds them of Easter, a symbol of Easter. And the sunrise by the ocean is something for me that really reminds me of Easter. So I could keep going and add as many details as I like. One last thing that I did is I used a white pen to add some swirly, curly lines around the waves, kind of to look like white caps in the ocean. So I might do a couple of those. And that is where I decided to stop, and I'm curious to see what details you might add to yours. So I'll show you, this was my first example. I did it on the back, and I have added the same on the front to show you how I did it, but I'm curious what you might add. All right, I hope that everybody has a wonderful Easter coming up this weekend. Really exciting to have a day to celebrate all of the hope in the world and the new life and the exciting things that come along with springtime and with Easter. So if you do give this craft a try, I would love to see a picture and see how your coffee filter experiment turns out. All right, my friends, I will see you next week on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful Easter coming up. Bye, everyone.